Marcus used to play, and Stephen A. loves to troll. This beef was actually not between them. It was between DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. DeMarcus Lawrence is now on the Seattle Seahawks, and he said he had no shot of winning a Super Bowl, and the rest ensued. I want to let you have some final thoughts here, though, both of you, to just wrap this puppy up. I'll come to you first, Marcus.
Yeah, look, I acknowledge that DeMarcus Lawrence saying what he said in the interview in Seattle was weak. I didn't like that fact. But the fact remains is that DeMarcus Lawrence was in this organization for 11 years. He saw a lot of what we saw and didn't feel like this team was positioned to win Super Bowls in those times. Now, does he have something to do with that? Absolutely. But he's not saying anything that we haven't said or anybody else haven't said in a long time. The beef between him and Micah Parsons, Micah feeling like he needs to defend the Dallas Cowboys in the locker room, I get it. But that had nothing to do with Micah Parsons. That's all I got.
Well, I know that you'd like to say it that way, but I'm going to go back to what I said. The man speaks English. He could have easily said, I'm not talking about the players. That's not what he did. He included everybody in it. And the reason why I bring that up is because while Jerry Jones is clearly the number one person to blame, and there is no denying that, I recall there being several occasions over the last several years where we looked at the Dallas Cowboys as a legit Super Bowl contender. We saw their speed, their athleticism. We saw the play of quarterback Dak Prescott. We saw CeeDee Lamb. We saw others. And we said, yo, they got a chance. We did. And then they nosedived like a bag of cheap bricks. That's what they did. And so in the end, all I'm saying to you is this. What DeMarcus Lawrence hinted at, somebody needs to say Swagoo. And since clearly you don't want to say it, I'm going to say it. Yeah, Jerry Jones is at fault. But here's where the players are at fault, too. They have no leadership. There's plenty of instances where, you know what, it's left to the players. You got the players in the locker room. They're the ones fighting between the lines. Somebody needs to step up and be a leadership. It never has happened. Why would that be the case? Could it be that because it's America's team, people are more interested in the fame and the sizzle and the perks as opposed to actually winning football games? Think about this. No matter how much they struggle, where have you ever heard somebody say, I want out of Dallas? I'm sick of this. I'm tired of it. We're anticipating Joe Burrow, who went to a Super Bowl with a relatively moribund franchise throughout the years, that is the Cincinnati Bengals, went to a Super Bowl, for crying out loud. He's on the verge of asking out if they don't get their act together because that brother trying to win. We don't hear about that from Dallas Cowboy players. You know why? Because more often than not, they all want to stay because they caught up in the perks and the benefits and the affluence and the sizzle. They're caught up more in that than actually winning. That's Jerry Jones' fault too? I don't think so. That's on them. They're grown men. They're grown men.
I know you want to respond and defend your squad, but unfortunately...
There's nothing to defend. Go pick a move on. There's nothing to defend.
Unfortunately...
Nothing to defend.
He was on the same team, so I don't know what the whole winning dynamic means. Like, we lose together, we win together. Jonathan Jones, we win together as always because he's here to help us out on all this smoke that we are seeing in free agency. We'll put that to the side, JJ, for a second. I want to talk about the former Triple Crown winner, a Cooper Kupp. There's reports that maybe Dallas and Seattle are likely destinations for him. What are you hearing about wide receiver one?
Yeah, when he was released a couple days ago, we said on here that Dallas and Seattle were the top two landing spots for Cooper Kupp. Of course, it takes more than Cooper Kupp wanting to go somewhere. It takes also the teams wanting Cooper Kupp as well. First of all, let's look at sort of the connections. The new wide receivers coach for the Dallas Cowboys, Junior Adams, was Cooper Kupp's wide receivers coach at Eastern Washington in college. They got a lot of love for one another, and so that would be a natural fit, along with the fact that the Dallas Cowboys have a whole lot of cap space to use that they have not yet so far. Also, the Seattle Seahawks, because he is from the great state of Washington, Seattle, of course, located still in Washington, that would make some sense there. Ultimately, though, what's his price going to be? And the word that I've heard around is that he'll be a little bit surprised during this free agency tour of how little teams may be willing to give up. Obviously, the Rams, in an attempt to trade him, could not find anyone willing to take on either his cap number or potentially any sort of, hey, let's work something out here in a rework deal. And that's why he is now on his way and has been on his way out of Los Angeles. So we'll see if something winds up happening. Today, of course, Cooper Kupp has to want to agree to the terms. We'll see what that number is for an aging wide receiver who it's been, 3+ years since that incredible Triple Crown year. And look, the separation isn't really there anymore. The age is catching up to him. The availability has been a question mark for each of the past 3 years. So what is that number going to look like? Well, it has to be appealing to Cooper Kupp. We'll see if something winds up getting done today or this weekend.
Yeah, Kupp is 31. He'll be 32, I believe, in June. So as you mentioned, the age is definitely a factor in that. Elsewhere, let's look at the QB market because maybe a little minor blimp on the radar. Teams kind of finding their guys for next season. What have you noticed about all this movement when it comes to those QBs in week 1?
Well, it's kind of happened a little bit of the way that we thought it would. Once Geno Smith, we knew that he was up for an extension. Seattle didn't work out there. They trade him to the Las Vegas Raiders. An extension certainly is on the way for Geno. Then things started to fall into place. The Sam Darnold domino fell where he goes to Seattle. Minnesota made an effort to retain Daniel Jones. They were going up against an Indianapolis Colts team that could offer Daniel Jones a legitimate shot at competing for QB1 come week 1 against Anthony Richardson. And so he chooses that. Look, we've been saying ever since December, it was not at all a guarantee that the Atlanta Falcons were going to release Kirk Cousins. And now here we are a couple days into the new league year. They have not. I do not anticipate them releasing Kirk Cousins, and that will come at a cap charge of $10 million in 2026. They're going to hang on to him in hopes that someone will want to trade for him. That could happen next week. That could happen the week after. That could be after the draft. I do not at all believe that Kirk Cousins will be on the Atlanta Falcons roster come week 1, or maybe not even at the start of training camp. But they do want a draft pick for him, and I believe that ultimately they'll be able to get one for him. So that's sort of been the movement and non-movement so far as we await, of course, what Aaron Rodgers is going to do that, of course, could potentially lead to what Russell Wilson does.
Speaking of Rodgers, I mean, it seems like he's just on another vacation per usual all season, and we're just watching and waiting. What are you hearing about him and possibly finding a destination sometime soon?
Yeah, so there are 3 teams that Aaron Rodgers wants to be in the mix with. Okay, and there are 2 teams right now that seems that he is in the mix with. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But you have the Minnesota Vikings, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the New York Giants. Folks I talk to believe if the Vikings wanted Rodgers, he would already be a Minnesota Viking. They clearly have, of the 3 teams, the best roster. He would have a solid opportunity to start. It would probably be a short-term proposition with J.J. McCarthy still on the mend, but being their quarterback of the future. It would also, of course, complete the Brett Favre loop that is incredible for all of the narratives. But it doesn't seem that the Vikings, again, if they wanted to sign Aaron Rodgers, I believe that a signing would have already taken place. And so now you have the Giants and the Steelers. I don't know Aaron Rodgers' motivations. I don't spend a whole lot of time these days considering them. Some may think that he's taking his time because he enjoys the attention. Some may say more charitably and generously, look, it's a major decision. He's at the tail end of his career. He wants to take his time to make sure he is choosing the right destination. And then a third option is that he is waiting and waiting, hoping that his best option finally emerges with the Minnesota Vikings. So any of those 3 things or maybe something else could be a motivation for Rodgers. But as one NFL executive told me yesterday, look, wait on Aaron Rodgers at your own peril. We've seen this for the last several years. The Packers waited on him to sign a renegotiated deal. The Jets waited on him and the Packers to work out that deal. There's always some sort of waiting that takes place with Rodgers over these past couple of years. And we see that the New York Giants are moving ahead. They have Russell Wilson in the building today. They had him in the building last year. We'll see if that free agent